Making a single great season of television is incredibly difficult, and so we come to these 10 TV shows, each of which enjoyed enormous acclaim throughout their run and especially in the early going, only to catastrophically drop the ball in their final year. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 TV shows that flopped their final season. Number 10, Arrested Development. Though Netflix's revival of cancelled sitcom Arrested Development served up a rather underwhelming, messy 4th season, it does seem a little better in light of the hugely disappointing Season 5, which released in 2 parts across 2018 and 2019. By this point, it was painfully clear that nobody's heart was truly in the show, unaided by easily the weakest writing of the entire series, which couldn't even be spiced up by the presence of an overarching murder mystery plot. Season 4, despite its many flaws, at least offered up a highly memorable batch of episodes, but the 5th season's worst crime might be that it's just so damn forgettable. While nothing can ever take away from the brilliance of the show's first 3 seasons, this was an undeniable down note on which to conclude one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time. Some fans even have enough vitriol for Season 5 that they don't consider it canon and avoid it on repeat viewings. Yikes. Now, speaking of sitcoms, I want to know, what is the moment that annoyed you the most in a sitcom? Was it something in Arrested Development or something else? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 9, Prison Break. Prison Break's first 2 seasons were ludicrously entertaining nonsense, after which the law of diminishing returns swiftly kicked in, and the show ran itself into the ground for its remainder. After initially wrapping up with its 4th season and a TV movie finale in 2009, however, the series was revived for a belated 5th season in 2017. If the whiff of desperation wasn't already potent enough, folks, this blatant cash grab undid protagonist Michael Scofield's actually meaningful death from the show's original ending, while dusting off as many legacy cast members as possible for another wildly belated prison romp. Except TV had changed and moved on a lot since 2009, and Prison Break's same old convoluted thrills just didn't have the same giddy punch, not even in a so bad it's good kind of way. Few were really asking for more Prison Break given the relatively concrete ending the original finale gave fans, and the wonky writing only made it feel even more like perfunctory fan fiction the cast were paid a huge sum to appear in. Number 8, Sex Education. Sex Education came to a close last year with its rather limp and underwhelming 4th season, which seemingly typified that most involved were all too ready to move on from the acclaimed Netflix comedy series. Even accepting that a large contingent of the cast was no longer believable as teenagers, Ncuti Gatwa was roughly 30 when the final season was being filmed. Numerous popular cast members were totally absent, or had their roles majorly curtailed for this final batch of episodes. Furthermore, keeping Otis and Maeve apart for a good chunk of the season didn't exactly help, nor the overabundance of uninteresting, excessively melodramatic subplots, which made so much of this season feel like a pure wheel-spinning exercise. The show's once celebrated examination of teen sexuality fell to the wayside, for a final season that ultimately lacked a lot of the charm and spark of its first 3, feeling less like an artistic expression than a mere contractual fulfillment for all involved, which is a bit of a shame, really. Number 7, House of Cards. Even accepting that House of Cards suffered a severe quality drop-off in its last few seasons, the 6th and final season was an unmitigated train wreck. Now, in fairness, the showrunners had a nightmare scenario to deal with after firing Kevin Spacey from the show in the wake of serious allegations against the actor, as it meant they lost their main character. But at the very least, the show was already angling its focus more towards Robin Wright's President Claire Underwood, and so the 6th season could have solved this all by having Spacey's Frank Underwood die off-screen between seasons, jumping forward in time and swiftly moving on with a new story. Yet Season 6 opted instead to willingly stand in the shadow of Spacey's departure for almost its entirety, constantly begging the audience to remember the void he left behind. But worst of all, the show concluded with an absolute clanger of a series finale, resolving the season-long mystery of Frank's death in a fashion almost laughably clumsy, were it not such a sad indication of how far it had fallen. Number 6, Killing Eve. Spy thriller series Killing Eve was a massive success right out of the gate, with its first 2 seasons enjoying major critical and awards success. Season 3 didn't fare quite so well, but the 4th and final season well and truly saw the show drive headlong off a cliff. Beyond the feeling among even die-hard fans that the show should have probably ended a season or two prior, Season 4 introduced a spate of uninteresting subplots which stole attention away from the dynamic between Eve and Villanelle. The resolution of their relationship in the final episode was near universally derided by fans and critics alike, while many also complained about prominent series-spanning plot threads being left up in the air when the end credits roll for the last time. The wit and vivacity of the prior seasons were largely gone in this miserable final volume, which marked a sharp fall from the brilliance of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's work on the show's fated first season. Hell, even Luke Jennings, the author of the Villanelle books upon which the show is based, criticised the adaptation for bowing to convention. Not what you want to hear, is it? Cheers for checking out this list today, folks, and hopefully this list's ending does not disappoint. Now go and hit that subscribe button down below for more of this What Culture stuff in your life. Number 5, Master of None. Aziz Ansari's Master of None was a critical juggernaut in its first 2 seasons, and went on to win numerous Emmys, after which fans were kept in the dark on a 3rd season for the better part of 4 years. But just a month before its May 2021 premiere, Netflix confirmed Season 3, finally, which saw Ansari shift the story away from protagonist Dev towards his friend Denise. And though the central performances from Lena Waithe and Naomi Ackie were certainly solid, this 5-episode conclusion to the series ultimately felt like a different show. A somewhat lackluster, unfussed capper that lacked the wide-eyed charm of the 2 Dev-centric seasons. With a different name, perhaps Season 3 wouldn't have been judged quite so harshly. But given that the 2nd season left us all hanging re Dev and Francesca's relationship, the shift of protagonist, setting, aesthetic, and tone added up to something that barely felt like Master of None at all. Number 4, How I Met Your Mother. How I Met Your Mother's best days were very much long behind it when it finally wrapped up, but nobody could have anticipated quite how aggressively the writers would end up pissing off almost the entire fanbase, myself included. Season 9 had a ton of creative missteps, from setting all 24 episodes over a mere 3-day period, to the increasingly lazy writing, shallow characterization, and excess of subplots intended to pad the season out. But what truly sank the last season was its finale, where we learned that the mother was actually dead, in order to contrive a happy ending where Ted ends up with Robin instead, who has since gotten divorced from Barney, making most of the season feel like a throwaway afterthought. The 9th season was indifferently received by fans at large, but that final episode is unquestionably one of the most complained about finales in TV history. To kill off the mother for the sake of a shocking twist felt cruel and unnecessary, to be honest, ensuring this otherwise beloved sitcom spectacularly crashed and burned in its final hour. Number 3, Altered Carbon. Altered Carbon's first season wasn't perfect, but it sure was entertaining. A visually stunning cyberpunk series that touted a killer high concept, outstanding world building, and a solid ensemble cast. But Season 2 marked something of a reset for the series, with original lead Joel Kinnaman being replaced by Anthony Mackie. Though, given the show's premise of characters wearing synthetic sleeve bodies, on paper this presented an intriguing change-up. Except Mackie's performance never once felt consistent with Kinnaman's, even accepting that this season takes place 30 years later. His iteration of Takeshi Kovacs seemed like an entirely different person. In addition to this, Season 2's writing felt decidedly less consistent. And most disappointingly of all, the visual majesty of Season 1 was majorly scaled back, prompting many fans to assume that Netflix slashed the budget for the 2nd season. Ultimately, the streamer sent Season 2 out to die with only a minimal marketing push, so it's little surprise that the lavish sci-fi series was cancelled soon thereafter, despite a pretty damn compelling setup for Season 3. Number 2, The Crown. Though The Crown was definitely a major critical darling across its first 4 seasons, the historical drama series quality took a major nosedive in its final 2, as it edged closer to history which even younger viewers would be familiar with. The 6th and final season, which was set between 1997 and 2005, placed an arguably excessive focus on the death of Princess Diana, especially given the sheer glut of arguably exploitative Diana-centric media released in recent years. It just felt felt tired, didn't it? Beyond that, the events it focused on just weren't terribly interesting either, such as the courtship of Prince William and Kate Middleton. Riveting stuff. And perfectly cast though she was as a late-stage Queen Elizabeth, Imelda Staunton wasn't given much worthwhile to do in the role, especially compared to predecessors Claire Foy and Olivia Colman. As such, The Crown ended up the very thing many expected it to be when it first started: a vacuous, confused royal biography without sufficient human intrigue. Number 1. Weeds. There are still many fans of Showtime's dark comedy series Weeds who believe it reached its natural endpoint when widowed weed dealer Nancy Botwin burned down her neighborhood in an attempt to cover her tracks at the end of season 3. But the show continued on for 5, that is right, 5 more seasons after Nancy segued herself out of Agrestic. And though Weeds absolutely had its moments for the remainder, by the time it reached season 8 it was running on nothing but fumes. The storytelling had become tiresomely convoluted and Nancy was now a bit unlikable, to the point that many fans had resorted to only hate watching the show to its conclusion out of a misplaced sense of obligation. And yet, Weeds' final episode let Nancy off way too lightly for her many transgressions over the years, ending the caustic black comedy show on an awkwardly gooey, sentimental note which rang rather false. Weeds' creative juice ran dry numerous seasons before it finally ended, it must be said, and season 8 in particular was nothing but a fetid, desiccated husk of its prior glories in the end.